Hey everybody, this is Jeff. Coming at you from the writer's cabin in Highland County, Virginia. Just walking around today, actually. I think I'm going to go outside. A little more pleasant. There's Georgie. Hey buddy. What do you think? We do a reel outside today, huh? What do you say? Georgie agrees. Okay, look, the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the shooting incident last night. I just have to be honest with some of you guys. I'm so sick and tired of hearing about how they're all staged. It's really exhausting to have to even address this with rational people. The one where he was nicked in the ear and his ear wasn't blown off. It happens. Trust me, it happens. I was shot in Iraq, an entry wound up near my wrist and an exit wound in my forearm. Didn't hit any bones. It caused some damage, but they put the tendons popped out like a tangerine, and they just used their thumbs, pushed it back in, and put a couple stitches in there, stitched it right up. If it would have been, a couple of millimeters in a different direction, it probably would have ripped the bone of my arm in half. It happens. Trust me. All bullets don't cause massive damage, even ones from high-powered rifles. And maybe it hit something like a teleprompter and he had glass wounds. But it's not staged. Just stop making these arguments. It's boring and stupid. A guy behind him was killed. That's not a staged incident. It's ridiculous to make these arguments. You've got 340 million people in this country. Look around you. There's a lot of crazy people thinking about crazy shit and killing lots of people. They think about it all the time. And Donald Trump just happens to be one of those people that people don't like. Some people in his own party don't like him. Some people on the Democratic side don't like him. Some independents don't like him. These aren't really people these are crazy people. They're the same people that go into your schools and kill the children. It's just the president has better security. If you look at the video of the guy running through security, there's multiple levels of security at those events, but these people are human too. The Secret Service and all those people around them, they're human. They get complacent. They think the place is locked down. They think the people before them did their job. It happens all the time. They're not supermen. And you know what? They're switched on pretty well. And by the way, they did their job. They stopped the guy from getting into the room where the president was. That's what their job is. We can talk about how insane it was for him to get that far with a shotgun and a pistol and all that, and knives and all that stuff. But ultimately, the goal is they have layers. And when a guy gets close to the president, the layers get tighter. And it gets more difficult to get closer to him. In this case, the guy blew right by them. And they apparently tackled him and shot him or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if they shot him. I'm not even reading it. It's like, I'm not even going to follow this story. It's so ridiculous. He's not even in the same room with them. When he gets in the same room and starts waving around weapons stuff, it becomes a different story. But up until that point, it's like a guy outside the White House gates, storming the gates. The president's inside behind a building. It's the same situation. Quit making a big deal out of it. And it was staged. I mean, think about how stupid that is, that people are going to give up their lives to be a part of a staged event and spend the rest of their life in prison. Just stop, okay? People don't like this guy, and lunatics don't like him. But they also don't like people like Joe Biden, and they don't, it happens. It just so happens to be happening a lot more with this guy, but just don't buy into this conspiracy bullshit. It makes us all look stupid, You can bring up all sorts of stats that you want to, but ultimately it comes down to the one where he was nicked in the ear, miraculously. I could show you, there's an exit wound there's an exit wound, tiny little scar. You see that little scar right there that's next to the pimple? That's the exit wound from my bullet wound in Iraq. You barely see it. Just don't talk about what you don't know about, okay? And the president made a meal out of it and stood up and made the pronouncements and all that stuff. Yeah, he did that because he certainly knew at that point that the active shooter was taken out. This is a guy who understands the theater around him. Doesn't mean it was staged. Just come on. It's exhausting. If you want to ask questions about the details of tonight, I'm not following it really carefully because there's bigger stories, man. Iran, it's a huge story. Epstein files, it's a huge story. Don't let them distract you from this by theatrical press conferences and shit. You know? Did he move too slowly getting off the stage and all this? Just stop. You know? They move when they know when they're moving to a place is safe to move him to. And he doesn't have to be stressed. He's surrounded by the most secure military security system on the planet. Right, George? You know? I wouldn't be scared if Georgie was protecting me. No, he's surrounded by Secret Service. He's surrounded by police. He's surrounded by a security apparatus that says everybody going in there has been checked. And the guy going in there hadn't been checked. He didn't get in. Okay? It's the same thing with, you know, the reason they don't want to talk about the guy who shot him in the ear or nicked him in the ear or whatever it happened is because, you know, he came from a family who's, you know, he wasn't a Democrat. They don't want you to think about that. Same with the Charlie Kirk situation. You know, the guy who shot Charlie Kirk allegedly, right? They don't want you to think about the fact that he came from a very conservative family. It's all about like protecting the reputation of their morality. You know? Come on. Do better. I know a lot of people on my page who are my followers are thinking that I'm wrong about this, but I can tell you that you can get nicked and wounded very easily from very high-powered rifles and weapon systems and not have big scars to show for it. And then sometimes it's an inch to the right or the left, and we're talking about a different story. If it was an inch to the left, it would hit him straight in the face or in the head, and he'd be dead. But it didn't. And then people are talking about all these, you know, Secret Service guys shot him and shot at him and a bunch of nobody hit him or whatever I was reading this morning. I don't know all the details of it yet. I don't think anybody does. I mean, there were reports last night the guy was dead, so we don't know what to believe until it's further investigated and more information comes out. But yeah, you never try to shoot at a guy at a full sprint when you're not ready to draw. It's hard to hit somebody from 15 feet away who's standing right in front of you and not running at you with a pistol. Even these guys who are well trained, that's why they train all the time for this shit. I'm saying that from the perspective of a guy who is both a gun owner and a guy who's spent a lot of time around soldiers who shoot. It's hard. It's a perishable skill. And even when you're in your best conditions, you got to reach into your suit and draw and shoot when he's sprinting by you like an Olympic sprinter. Yeah, a lot of people are going to miss. That's why they tackle him. That's why there's another level of security. That's where somebody on the front of the door to the building they're going in, you know, that to the room they're going in. So there's just so much wrong with how this, because the more we talk about stuff like this, like it's a conspiracy, the more we become less credible. You know, we don't need to be a part of the conspiracy theorists that they are. You know, just chalk it up to crazy people trying to kill this guy. You know, and it's a great place to do it because there's 2,000 people in the room, 1,000 of which are journalists. You know, I've said 3 days ago, and my friend Kathy Gannon in Pakistan said the same thing today. We should just stop having politicians cozying up at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. They won't even let us pick which people are in the pool, in the White House press pool. Why should we invite them to dinner? You know, it's too cozy. We don't need to be cozy with people who are elected officials who waste our money. We need to be shining lights on them, not spotlights, but like, you know, not like, hey, Hollywood spotlights, but like spotlights. Like, what are they doing right and wrong each day? They don't need to be up there going, you know, sir, would you like the fish or this, you know, or the chicken? No, don't invite them to these events. If you get awards or something for being a White House correspondent, give out the awards, give a couple speeches. Everybody goes home. Quit. These awards things, they can be too much. And when you're doing it with like all the senators and congressmen around, I mean, CBS News, you know, they had it was reported that Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller were sitting at the table that Barry Weiss and CBS News had invited him to. I mean, you know, that's a problem. You know, that's cozy. The Larry Ellisons of the family and David Ellisons, who own a lot of media organizations. And, you know, these people shouldn't be mixing with the president and their staff, you know, and we shouldn't be mixing with them. You know, I remember being at 60 Minutes one time and I walked in and there was a couple of very liberal producers there at the time. They were celebrating Obama's, you know, second release. And I liked Obama. I thought he was a very smart guy. I still think he's a very smart man and did a lot for the country. He's going to go down as one of the great presidents in our history. But those people were like celebrating his win. And I said, like, why are you, what are we celebrating? They're like, oh, Obama won. I'm like, well, that's not our job. Our job is to like report on these fucking people. No offense, Mr. Obama, I love you, you're a great guy. But like our job is to shed a light on what they're doing. And they're not perfect. And when they're not spot on, we need to tell the American people about it. We don't need to be eating chicken or salmon with them. It's horrible. Have some pride. So the White House correspondent president is a CBS News White House reporter. Okay? She's first minority, actually, Asian American, I believe. She came here from China. Came here when she was 2 years old. Set an example, ma'am. Go back and start talking to your people about whether these events should be, attended by all the presidential staff and all the members of Congress. Why don't you just have bring your wives and children, celebrate your career there. Quit making this into some giant glad handing so that y'all can make each other famous. It's pathetic. And it's, and this is why the people are starting to go to more independent media sources now. Because, we don't believe in attending this stupid shit. And if we do, we're already heading towards that mainstream world that we escaped or shouldn't be a part of anymore. Because there's not enough honest voices out there saying, this is wrong. It's just stupid. So, like, follow, and share. If you like what we're doing here on Substack, come support us. $80 a year. I know it's steep, but it's a full-time job. So, comment. I love your comments. Take care. Have a great Sunday. Oh, and we'll have our live Substack tonight at probably around 8 o'clock. So if you're a paid subscriber, you can get on there and ask all the questions you want about this ridiculous event. Nobody cares, honestly. Iran, Epstein files, and them trying to steal elections. Those are your focus points. In fact, the order should be Epstein files, elections, and Iran. Those should be the order in which you guys are paying attention to the news. All this other crap, unless he gets shot, quit worrying about it. He's fine. He's got a lot of people around him taking care of him. Anyways, take care. See you from the Writer's Cabin tonight on Substack. If you're interested and want to be a subscriber, you know how to hit the button below and subscribe to our page. Take care, everybody.